February 28, 2026. Persian Gulf, 2:17 local time. The sea is black and perfectly still. Lieutenant Daniel Mercer stands on the dimly lit deck of the destroyer, USS Gravely DDG-107, staring toward the dark horizon where Iran lies somewhere beyond the night. 20 miles away, the Iranian coastline is invisible, hidden behind mist and the quiet weight of history. Mercer is not thinking about history. He is thinking about the order in his pocket. A strike authorization. The first one. He folds the paper slowly and slides it back into his vest. Around him, the ship hums with quiet tension. Radar screens glow inside the Combat Information Center. Sailors whisper into headsets. Somewhere below deck, missile crews stand by their consoles. No one laughs tonight, because everyone knows what this means. For weeks, tensions between the United States and Iran have been spiraling. All tankers seized, drones shot down, cyber attacks no one officially claims. But tonight is different. Tonight, someone pulls the trigger. Mercer walks inside the command room. The air smells like coffee and electronics. Commander Walsh stands over the tactical display, studying the glowing map of the Persian Gulf. Red icons mark Iranian coastal batteries. Green icons mark American ships. The distance between them feels very small. Intel confirmed. Mercer asks quietly. Walsh nods without looking up. Missile launch platforms near Bandar Abbas, he says. Ballistic capability. Pentagon says they're preparing to fire. Mercer exhales slowly. If Iran launches first, American ships could be trapped in the narrow waters of the Strait of Hormuz. Thousands of sailors would have minutes to react, maybe less. Walsh finally turns. The order came through 10 minutes ago. Mercer already knows what he will say next. Preemptive strike. The words hang in the room like smoke. Mercer studies the screen again. The Iranian launch site sits quiet on the map, just a blinking red square on a satellite image. Somewhere inside that square are soldiers exactly like him, waiting, watching, probably just as nervous. Time, Mercer asks. Walsh glances at the clock. 3 minutes. Outside, the wind rises slightly over the deck. A missile technician's voice crackles over the intercom. DLS cells ready. Mercer steps toward the firing console. His reflection stares back from the glass screen. He has trained for this moment for 14 years. But training never includes the silence before the first shot of a war. Walsh gives the final command. Lieutenant Mercer, execute strike. Mercer's finger hovers over the launch key. One press. That's all it takes. A war that historians will argue about for decades. A war that will kill thousands. A war that might change the entire Middle East. Begins with a single decision. Mercer closes his eyes for half a second. Then he turns the key. Above them, deep inside the destroyer's missile cells, steel doors explode open, and the night sky erupts with fire. The missile leaves the ship like a thunderclap. From the vertical launch system of USS Gravely DDG-107, the first Tomahawk cruise missile punches through the darkness, a pillar of fire tearing open the night above the Persian Gulf. Then another, and another. The destroyer shudders as steel doors slam open one after another. Missiles roar skyward before tilting east, their engines screaming as they disappear toward the unseen coast of Iran. Inside the Combat Information Center, Lieutenant Daniel Mercer watches the missiles appear on the tactical screen as small green triangles racing across digital water. Speed, 880 kilometers per hour. Time to impact, 8 minutes. No one speaks. The war has begun. Mercer leans closer to the screen. Each missile follows a programmed route, weaving between commercial shipping lanes and hugging the surface of the Gulf before turning toward their target, the launch platforms near Bandar Abbas. Intelligence believes the site contains mobile anti-ship missiles, capable of sealing the Strait of Hormuz. If those batteries fire, dozens of tankers and American warships could burn before sunrise. The Pentagon wants them destroyed before that happens. Missiles are stable, a technician reports quietly. Mercer nods, but stability does not mean certainty. Tomahawks fly low only a few dozen meters above the water. Radar can lose them in sea clutter. Navigation systems can drift, and Iranian air defenses are not blind. Somewhere along the coast, radar operators are staring at their screens right now, waiting. Across the Gulf, in the coastal mountains above Bandar Abbas, Sergeant Reza Farhadi rubs his tired eyes inside a small radar bunker. He has been awake for 16 hours. The radar screen glows green in the dark room. Nothing unusual, just fishing boats, tankers, routine air traffic crossing the Gulf. Then a strange line appears on the edge of the screen. Fast, very fast. Reza leans closer. Control, he says into his headset. I'm picking up multiple low-altitude contacts over the water. Silence answers him. The contacts multiply. 3, 5, 8. They move in a straight line across the Gulf. Rez's pulse quickens. He adjusts the radar filters. The signal becomes clearer, small, low, fast. His stomach tightens. Cruise missiles. Command, confirm. He shouts. Possible incoming. The bunker door bursts open. An officer rushes in. What do you see? Rizal points to the screen. The officer stares for 1 second. Then 2. His face goes pale. Sound the alarm. Outside, sirens begin to howl across the Iranian coastal base. Soldiers run toward missile batteries. Searchlights sweep the sky. But out over the dark waters of the Persian Gulf, the Tomahawks keep coming. Only 5 minutes remain, and no one yet knows if they can be stopped. The radar bunker shakes as the sirens scream across the coastal base near Bandar Abbas. Sergeant Riza Farhadi stares at the screen. The incoming contacts are multiplying. 10, 12, 15, all racing across the dark water of the Persian Gulf. Cruise missiles. There is no longer any doubt. Riza grabs the radio. Air Defense Command, this is Coastal Radar Station 4. Confirmed multiple low-altitude missiles inbound from southwest. A burst of static answers him. Then a voice tight with urgency. Track them. Surface batteries are activating. Outside, floodlights ignite across the base. Soldiers sprint toward missile launchers and anti-aircraft guns. Riza can hear engines starting. Metal doors slamming. Boots pounding across concrete. In the darkness above the mountains, Iranian air defense radar dishes begin turning toward the sea. But the missiles are already close. Too close. Inside the bunker, the radar screen shows the green contacts slipping through gaps in the coastal terrain. The Tomahawk cruise missile is built for this exact moment. Low flight. Terrain following navigation. Almost invisible until the final minutes. Riza feels the air grow heavier in the room. How long? The officer beside him asks. Riza checks the speed. His throat tightens. 2 minutes. Outside, one of the air defense crews finally locks a target. A launcher swings toward the sea. The first interceptor missile erupts upward in a violent blast of fire. For a brief moment, the sky over Iran lights up like sunrise. In the radar bunker, everyone holds their breath. The interceptor streaks toward the incoming contacts. On the radar screen, one of the green dots disappears. Riza exhales sharply. Hit, but the celebration lasts less than a second. 14 missiles remain. Across the Gulf, Lieutenant Daniel Mercer stands rigidly in the Combat Information Center aboard USS Gravely DDG-107. The tactical screen shows the same battle from the opposite side. 1 Tomahawk lost, 14 still inbound. Commander Walsh studies the data. Iranian defenses are active, he says quietly. Mercer nods. They both know what happens next. The missiles will split into multiple attack paths, diving low into valleys, weaving between hills, approaching the target from different angles. A tactic designed to overwhelm defenses. Time to target, Mercer asks. A technician answers immediately. 60 seconds. Inside the Iranian bunker, Riza suddenly notices something strange. The radar contacts are no longer flying in a straight line. They are spreading apart. His eyes widen. They're splitting. Outside, another interceptor launches, and another. Missiles scream into the sky above the coastal base, but the Tomahawks are already diving toward the mountains around Bandar Abbas. Riza realizes the terrible truth. The attack is no longer aimed at the radar station. The real target lies deeper inland. Somewhere the Americans believe Iran is preparing to launch its own missiles. The first explosion arrives without warning. High above the mountains outside Bandar Abbas, a Tomahawk cruise missile drops below the radar horizon and slams into the valley floor. For half a second, the night is silent. Then the mountain erupts. A blinding flash tears open the darkness, followed by a thunderous shockwave that rolls across the desert like a collapsing wall of air. Dust and fire surge upward as the missile detonates directly inside an Iranian missile launch compound hidden between the hills. Concrete shelters shatter. Fuel trucks flip onto their sides. Flames spill across the base. Inside the radar bunker, Sergeant Riza Farhadi flinches as the ground trembles beneath his boots. A second explosion follows. Then a third. The bunker lights flicker violently. Riza stares at the radar screen. The incoming contacts are disappearing one by one. Not intercepted. Impact. The American missiles have reached their targets. Across the mountains, another Tomahawk cruise missile slams into a hardened missile launcher positioned on a concrete ramp. The blast tears the launcher apart in a violent fireball. Pieces of burning metal arc into the sky. Inside the command center aboard USS Gravely DDG-107, Lieutenant Daniel Mercer watches the same destruction unfold on satellite feed. The video arrives with a 3-second delay. but it is clear enough. One by one, the targets erupt into fire. A Pentagon analyst speaks through the secure line. Direct hits confirmed on launch pads. Mercer feels no triumph, only a heavy silence. Each of those explosions means people soldiers just like the one standing beside him. Commander Walsh keeps his eyes on the screen. Continue tracking remaining missiles. Outside, the dark waters of the Persian Gulf are calm again. The launch cells on the destroyer have gone quiet. The strike is nearly finished. Back in the mountains of Iran, chaos spreads across the shattered missile base. Flames roar through the compound. Sirens wail. Soldiers stagger from collapsed buildings, their uniforms covered in dust and blood. Reza bursts from the radar bunker and looks toward the valley. A pillar of fire climbs hundreds of feet into the sky. Another explosion rips through a nearby storage bunker. He realizes what the Americans have destroyed. The coastal anti-ship missile unit, the weapons meant to seal the Strait of Hormuz. Reza's chest tightens. This was not a warning strike. This was the opening blow of a war. A truck screeches to a halt beside the bunker. An officer jumps out, shouting over the noise of the flames. Tehran wants damage reports immediately. Reza looks back at the burning valley. The base is gone, but something even worse is already beginning. Far above the mountains, Iranian long-range radar stations are now scanning the entire Gulf, and in command centers across the country. Senior officers are reaching the same conclusion. The United States has attacked, which means retaliation is no longer. Inside the Combat Information Center of USS Gravely DDG-107, the air feels suddenly colder. A radar technician stares at his screen. Bright red arcs are rising from deep inside Iran. Ballistic missiles. Not one, not two, several. They climb violently into the upper atmosphere, leaving white trails that curve high above the mountains east of Bandar Abbas. Lieutenant Daniel Mercer feels his stomach tighten. The retaliation has begun. How many launches? Commander Walsh asks calmly. The technician zooms the display. Tracking. 6 confirmed. 6 ballistic missiles racing toward the Persian Gulf. Their trajectories are clear. They are not heading toward cities. They are heading toward ships, toward the narrow waters of the Strait of Hormuz, where American naval forces sit exposed in the dark. Mercer understands the message immediately. This is not a symbolic response. Iran intends to hit the fleet. Estimate impact. Walsh asks. 7 minutes. The room goes silent. 7 minutes is barely enough time to react. Above the destroyer, radar arrays begin spinning faster, scanning the sky for the incoming warheads. The ship's Aegis combat system activates automatically. Computers calculate trajectories. Threat assessments flash across the screen. Possible targets appear in red. Several U.S. vessels patrol nearby waters. An aircraft carrier group, supply ships, destroyers, all potential targets. Mercer studies the radar picture carefully. One missile trajectory suddenly aligns with their position. He feels the weight of it immediately. That one is ours, he says quietly. Walsh nods. Prepare intercept. On the deck above, missile crews rush to the vertical launch system. The defensive missiles inside the launch cells are different from the Tomahawks fired earlier. These are interceptors. Fast, violent, built to destroy incoming warheads in the sky. The order comes over the ship-wide speaker. Ballistic missile defense stations. Stand by. Mercer hears the change in the voices around him. This is no longer a distant strike. This is survival. Across the Gulf, far inland in Iran, Sergeant Reza Farhadi watches the launch through a cracked bunker doorway. 6 fiery pillars roar into the sky from hidden launch pads in the desert. The ground shakes beneath his boots. The retaliation is unstoppable now. Beside him, a young soldier whispers quietly, "They will strike the Americans at sea." Reza says nothing. He simply watches the glowing missiles vanish into the clouds. Out over the black waters of the Persian Gulf, Lieutenant Mercer suddenly hears the radar operator shout, "Warheads separating." 6 ballistic missiles split into multiple descending targets. Dozens of bright red markers appear on the tactical screen. Mercer's pulse jumps. Multiple re-entry vehicles confirmed. Commander Walsh speaks one sharp command. Fire interceptors. Above the destroyer, the missile hatches explode open again. But this time, they are firing to stay alive. The sea around USS Gravely DDG-107 erupts again with fire. But this time, the missiles are climbing straight into the sky. From the vertical launch cells, the first SM-3 missile blasts upward in a violent column of flame. Seconds later, a second interceptor follows, then a third. The night above the Persian Gulf fills with streaks of burning light. Inside the Combat Information Center, Lieutenant Daniel Mercer watches the intercept geometry unfold. Across the glowing tactical display, 6 Iranian ballistic missiles have split into multiple re-entry vehicles. Now there are more than a dozen incoming targets descending toward the fleet, each one moving at hypersonic speed. Commander Walsh speaks calmly, but the tension in the room is unmistakable. Track all threats. Assign intercept pairs. Mercer nods and begins issuing rapid commands. Interceptor 1 and to targeting track Alpha. Interceptor 3 and for targeting track Bravo. The Aegis combat system calculates firing solutions faster than any human could think, but technology does not remove fear. Everyone in the room knows that even one warhead getting through could destroy a ship. Outside, the interceptors are already racing toward the upper atmosphere. High above the Gulf, the first Iranian re-entry vehicle begins to glow. The warhead punches back into the atmosphere, its surface burning bright orange against the black sky. It is falling directly toward the American fleet. In the radar room, a technician whispers, "Closing fast." The SM-3 missile reaches the intercept point first, at nearly 100 kilometers above the Earth. The interceptor releases its kinetic kill vehicle. No explosives, just pure speed. Two objects collide in the vacuum at nearly 10 kilometers per second. On Mercer's screen, the red marker disappears. Intercept confirmed. The technician shouts. A brief cheer breaks the tension, but it fades quickly. More warheads are still descending. Across the Gulf, on the shattered Iranian base outside Bandar Abbas, Sergeant Reza Farhadi watches the distant sky. From the desert hills, bright flashes appear high above the horizon. Interceptions. He understands immediately. The Americans are shooting down the missiles, but not all of them. Some warheads are already diving lower through the atmosphere. One of them is heading directly toward the shipping lanes near the Strait of Hormuz. Back aboard the destroyer, Mercer suddenly hears the radar operator again. "Sir, one warhead has broken through intercept coverage." The tactical display highlights a single descending track. Impact point predicted, Central Persian Gulf. Estimated distance from their position, 20 kilometers. Commander Walsh exhales slowly. Too close. Mercer watches the glowing track fall toward the ocean. If it detonates in the shipping lanes, dozens of civilian vessels could be caught in the blast. Tankers, cargo ships, hundreds of sailors. He speaks quietly. "Can we intercept?" The explosion over the Persian Gulf arrives like a second sunrise. For one blinding instant, the night disappears. A white flash bursts across the horizon, followed by a towering column of fire and water erupting from the ocean. The shockwave rolls across the Gulf, flattening waves and rattling every ship within kilometers. On the bridge of USS Gravely DDG-107, sailors instinctively duck as the blast wave slams into the hull. Windows tremble. Loose equipment crashes to the floor. Then the thunder arrives deep, violent, echoing across the dark water. Inside the Combat Information Center, Lieutenant Daniel Mercer grips the edge of the console. Impact confirmed, the radar operator says quietly. The warhead detonated in open water. Not nuclear, but still powerful enough to shake the entire shipping lane near the Strait of Hormuz. Mercer immediately checks the radar picture. Dozens of civilian vessels appear on the screen: tankers, container ships, small cargo freighters. One of them sits dangerously close to the blast site, a Panamanian-flagged old tanker drifting directly through the expanding shockwave. Damage assessment. Commander Walsh asks. A technician studies satellite feed coming through the secure link. Smoke rises from the water where the warhead exploded. The tanker is still afloat, but its radar signature flickers. Possible structural damage, the technician says. Mercer exhales slowly. The warhead missed the fleet, but the message from Iran is unmistakable. They are willing to strike the shipping lanes, and the Strait of Hormuz carries nearly a fifth of the world's oil. If those waters close, the global economy could collapse within days. Walsh turns to Mercer. Fleet Command is asking for status. Mercer hesitates. The destroyer is unharmed, but the situation is spiraling. This was a warning shot, Mercer says quietly. Walsh shakes his head. No, he replies. This was retaliation. Across the Gulf, on the burning missile base outside Bandar Abbas, Sergeant Reza Farhadi sees the distant flash reflecting across the clouds. Even from dozens of kilometers away, the light is unmistakable. One of their missiles struck the sea. A soldier beside him whispers a prayer. Reza says nothing, because he knows what comes next. The Americans will not stop with a single strike. This is only the opening exchange. Back aboard the destroyer, Mercer suddenly hears the communications officer shout across the room. New radar contacts multiple aircraft lifting off from inland Iran. The tactical display updates instantly. Several fast-moving targets appear over southern Iran. Fighter aircraft, heading west, heading straight toward the Gulf. Walsh's voice cuts through the tension. Identify them. The radar technician zooms in. Within seconds, The computer identifies the aircraft type. Mercer reads the label slowly. Confirmed launch of F-14 Tomcat squadrons. The same legendary fighter once flown by the U.S. Navy decades ago, now flying for Iran. The tactical screen inside USS Gravely DDG-107 fills with new red symbols. Fast, low, closing quickly across the dark waters of the Persian Gulf. Lieutenant Daniel Mercer watches the radar tracks form a tight formation lifting from southern Iran. 6 aircraft, speed increasing, heading directly toward the American fleet. The system identifies them within seconds. F-14 Tomcat, the same aircraft once flown by American Navy pilots decades earlier now, painted with Iranian markings and flying a combat mission against the U.S. Navy. Commander Walsh studies the display. They're coming low, he says. Mercer nods. The fighters are flying just above the waterline, using the curvature of the Earth to avoid long-range radar detection. A classic anti-ship approach. Possible missile carriers. Walsh asks. A technician checks intelligence files. Confirmed capability for anti-ship weapons. The room goes quiet. Ballistic missiles were terrifying, but fighter aircraft bring something worse. Precision, flexibility, and human pilots making decisions in real time. Outside on the destroyer's deck, the sea wind grows stronger. Sailors man radar stations and watch the eastern horizon through night vision optics. The sky remains black, but everyone knows the fighters are coming. Inside the combat center, Mercer suddenly hears the radar operator speak again. Carrier group launching combat air patrol. Green icons appear on the screen west of the fleet. From the nearby American carrier, 2 F-18 Super Hornet fighters blast into the night sky. Their afterburners burn bright as they climb above the Gulf. Minutes later, 2 more follow. 4 American fighters accelerating toward the incoming Iranian aircraft. The intercept will happen somewhere over the dark waters of the Persian Gulf. Mercer watches the closing distance shrink rapidly. 60 kilometers, 50, 40, across the Gulf, inside the cockpit of an Iranian F-14 Tomcat. Captain Armand Darye grips the control stick tightly. His radar display glows green in the darkness. For years he trained for this exact mission, defending Iranian waters. But tonight feels different. Tonight he is flying toward American warships, toward American pilots. His wingman's voice crackles over the radio. Radar contact. Multiple aircraft approaching. Armand already sees them. 4 targets racing toward his formation from the west. American fighters. The distance closes rapidly. 30 kilometers. 20. The radar warning receiver inside Armand's cockpit suddenly screams. A sharp electronic tone fills the headset. Missile lock. Back aboard the destroyer. Mercer hears the fighter controller shout across the room. Super Hornets have fired. On the tactical screen, 2 missiles streak toward the Iranian formation. The first aerial battle of the war has begun, and high above the Gulf, someone is about to die. High above the dark waters of the Persian Gulf, 2 missiles tear through the night. They launch from the wings of A-18 Super Hornet, their rocket motors burning, bright as they accelerate toward the incoming Iranian formation. Inside his cockpit, Captain Armand Darye instantly hears the shrill alarm. Missile lock. The warning tone cuts through the headset like a knife. Break, break. Armand shouts over the radio. He pulls the stick hard to the left. The heavy F-14 Tomcat rolls violently, its twin engines roaring as it dives toward the ocean surface. His wingman drops flares behind him, bright sparks scattering across the night sky. But the incoming missiles are radar-guided. They do not care about flares. They track the aircraft itself. From 30 kilometers away, the American missiles close the distance in seconds. Inside the American fighter cockpit, Lieutenant Mark Jensen watches his radar display carefully. 2 targets locked. Distance shrinking fast. Fox 3. He mutters calmly the standard radio call for a radar-guided missile launch. His F-18 Super Hornet banks slightly as he prepares for the next maneuver. Below him, the Iranian formation scatters. 1 F-1 for Tomcat dives sharply toward the sea, attempting to hide inside radar clutter from the ocean surface. Another pulls straight up, trying to outrun the missile in altitude. Neither tactic works. The first explosion arrives suddenly. One of the missiles slams into the climbing Iranian fighter. A bright orange fireball blossoms in the sky, lighting the clouds above the Gulf. Debris scatters across the darkness. Inside the destroyer USS Gravely DDG-107, Lieutenant Daniel Mercer sees the red icon disappear from the tactical display. Splash 1, the radar operator says quietly, but the battle is far from over. 5 Iranian fighters remain, and they are now less than 20 kilometers from the fleet. Back in his cockpit, Armand levels his damaged formation. just meters above the surface of the Persian Gulf. The ocean rushes beneath his wings. His radar locks onto a distant American aircraft. Target acquired. His finger rests on the trigger of an air-to-air missile. For a brief moment, the war becomes intensely personal. Pilot against pilot. Skill against skill. He hears his wingman shout over the radio. American fighters behind us. Armin does not look back. He fires. A missile leaps from the wing of the Iranian F-14 Tomcat, streaking west toward the American fighters protecting the fleet. Back aboard the destroyer, Mercer sees the new launch instantly appear on radar. An Iranian missile heading toward the U.S. aircraft. Commander Walsh studies the screen carefully. The distance between fighters is collapsing. Within minutes, the battle will move directly over the American ships. Mercer suddenly realizes something else. The Iranian aircraft are still flying toward the fleet, which means they were never here just to fight. They came for the ships. The sky above the Persian Gulf is no longer quiet. It burns. Missile trails slash across the darkness like glowing scars in the night, weaving between the American F-18 Super Hornet fighters and the incoming Iranian F-14 Tomcat formation. Inside his cockpit, Lieutenant Mark Jensen sees the missile warning light flash violently on his display. "Missile inbound," he shouts. The weapon launched by Captain Armin Darye is already closing fast. Jensen slams the throttle forward and banks sharply to the right, diving toward the dark ocean surface. His Super Hornet screams through the air as he releases a burst of defensive countermeasures. Chaff explodes behind the aircraft, thousands of tiny metallic strips scattering into the sky. For a moment, the missile's radar struggles to decide which signal to follow. The missile veers, then detonates in the empty air behind Jensen's aircraft. A violent flash lights the sky. Jensen exhales sharply. Missile defeated, but the battle is not finished. Below them, the fleet waits in the darkness. On the radar screens aboard USS Gravely DDG-107, Lieutenant Daniel Mercer watches the terrifying geometry of the fight. The Iranian fighters are now dangerously close, 15 kilometers. Some have broken away from the dogfight entirely. They are heading straight for the ships. New contacts separating from the formation, the radar operator says. Mercer zooms the tactical display. 3 F-14 Tomcat aircraft are dropping even lower over the water, too low for long-range missiles. Perfect altitude for launching anti-ship weapons. Commander Walsh understands immediately. They're making a strike run. Outside, the sea wind roars across the destroyer's deck as radar antennas spin furiously. Sailors stare eastward through night vision optics. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Iranian pilots are racing toward them at nearly the speed of sound. Back in the sky, Captain Armin Darye levels his fighter just meters above the surface of the Gulf. The American fighters are still behind him, but this part of the mission was never about surviving. It was about reaching the fleet. His radar locks onto the largest target in the American formation. A massive radar return. An aircraft carrier. His weapons officer confirms the solution. Target locked. Armin stares at the glowing symbol on his display. This single moment will decide everything. He presses the launch button. Beneath the wing of the F-14 Tomcat, an anti-ship missile ignites and tears forward across the ocean. Seconds later, 2 more Iranian fighters launch their weapons. 3 missiles racing low over the waves toward the American fleet. Back aboard USS Gravely DDG-107, the radar alarms explode with sound. The tactical screen flashes red. Anti-ship missiles inbound. The operator shouts. Mercer feels his pulse hammering in his chest. Distance to impact. 30 seconds. Commander Walsh gives the order instantly. Engage.